right, guys. I'm James O'Neill. Keith Risty's with us along today.
I'm back.
And this is the O'Neill Ops Podcast, Episode 3. We were just kind of talking the other day about what we should do, some of the topics that we should cover. And we've had an overwhelming response from guys. I mean, we've got an amazing amount of different topics that we could go over here.
Which we will.
We'll touch, all of them are good.
Yep.
And we're going to need, we'll be able to do so many different topics that it'll be a blast for us. But we thought this one would be fun to go over the legislation that we helped pass regarding night hunting in our state. Senate Bill 58 and House Bill 1219. And this is something that, it was just kind of our thing. This was something that we took a lot of pride in, and it was something that we took a lot of time and put a lot of effort in to get past, not just because of the fun side of things, but because it was something that made our lifestyle. It was something that made our job more efficient and a lot more effective.
And it had to be done in order for the ops team to go ahead and, grow as far as night hunting itself. Something had to be changed just for the sake of the animal, I guess, just for the sake of,
the ethics side of things. As much as I hate to say ethics, in this day and age, you have to. Nobody wants to watch a video of an elk getting stuck in the ass with an arrow. And just as, nobody wants to see a coyote run off with a little 40 grain slug going 900 feet per second stuck in its front shoulder, in sub-zero conditions. But the way that we kind of went, what I want to do is the way that we approached this. I want to go into detail on how we did it and what we did to accomplish it. We've had a lot of guys. I can't remember, it was a couple years ago or a year ago, I think, some fellas from Minnesota that actually asked us, hey man, what did you guys do? And the first thing is you got to find somebody to back it. Okay. You have to find a sponsor. You have to have somebody in the legislation, whether it's a state senator, whether it's a state representative, that will back your bill, that will agree with it and help you push your agenda. And before we really get too detailed any further, I said this yesterday too, before I actually pushed the record button.
Yeah, you said this yesterday to yourself.
I'm not a people person. I could talk into the camera all day. Looking at a piece of glass or even this, but as soon as I get in front of people, it's something that I would rather not do. But in this instance, I had to do it. Somebody had to nut up. It's not because I wanted to go, hey man, look at what we're doing. It definitely added to our credentials.
Oh yeah, 100% it did.
There was a lot of people that it actually opened the doors for us. Like even, James Christensen, he was actually a shareholder in Silencer Co. and worked at Gunworks, did a bunch of stuff. And he said, man, that's when I asked him, I'm like, why did you even look at us? And he's like, well, when I saw you guys pass that legislation or help do it, I shouldn't say, we'll get into that too. He said, I knew what passion you had for the sport. And it's not just the sport. It was because we're protecting the animals that we raise for the world's food. And that is a tool that allows us to do that more efficiently. And more effectively. You hear me use those two words quite a bit. But I know another thing too, guys, you have to bear with me a little bit. I'm going to probably be jumping back and forth. I'm going to try to get all the little details, and I've got a little bit of, I think I might have some ADD going on, and you'll just have to kind of bear with me as we get going here, because I kind of get pretty intense over this topic, especially in when we get to some of these talking points.
Yeah, you'll see what I deal with on the daily with that ADD thing.
They'll ask me a question, and about what was the other day when we had elk hunters here. I walked in the other room to put my coat on. 20 seconds later, I'm like, what were we talking about again? It's just how it goes.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, so what we did was we found a guy that was the prime sponsor of the bill.
Yeah. How did you find, I mean, as far as how did you get in contact with him? How did he step up, I guess, or how did he become the sponsor?
What happened was Beck, our local game warden, got a hold of me a couple years before this to notify me that you could legally use night vision now with rimfire and shotgun. We better go over that real quick too.
Sure. Yeah.
Our state law, before we got this passed, was written as such, as this follows here. It was written that with the landowner and one guest could go out and spotlight and hunt at night with a rimfire or a shotgun to take, to legally take predators and varmints. And a lot of you guys that know hunting predators, at night, sure, you can get them in close, but the percentage of actual kill shots with a rimfire, it just doesn't work, man. It doesn't work. It doesn't have the energy. It doesn't have the hydrostatic shock. It doesn't. We
spent 2 years doing that.
I was just gonna say we've got firsthand experience, and and I even said that we've got footage. We could show you guys footage that nobody will ever see of a precision shot placement that just doesn't kill the animal. And granted, every time it's different. Sometimes that little round might weasel its way in and hit a vital, but it doesn't have to be that way. And anyway, when our local game warden got a hold of me and said, hey, you can legally use night vision now, it didn't change anything regarding the caliber restriction.
No.
And I just asked, man, I can't remember. I asked the guy, and here's another thing too, okay? I just asked the guy that I knew that actually bought a suppressor from me. And he said, hey, I go, hey, man, what do you think it would, because he knows guys in the legislature. He knows, he's in there now. He goes, I know what to do. I know how to do it. And I'm like, I don't. Would you be able to help me out? What do you think the chances of this going through would be? And he said, man, it's going to be an uphill battle, but if you do it the right way, I think we can get it done. And he's actually the guy that found that kind of presented it. And then it automatically happened. You will get a sponsor. You'll get a prime sponsor, basically a head sponsor of the bill. So it's not like I reached out and actually made contact with Jason Fryricks, was the prime sponsor of this bill.
Yep.
He just saw it evidently and basically said, hey, man, I like this. Let's do it.
And am I right? Did they try and change this a year or two before that and failed kind of miserably? Maybe not so much the thermal end of the deal, but I thought they were saying that they tried to do something, change it, and didn't even come close.
I think so. I think you're right. But then again, I wasn't really paying attention to that. I think you are right, though. And I mean, just to kind of go through and go into details on this, here's another thing too that really gets me fired up is these guys that helped us out, that gave us a lot of intel. Like I said, this wasn't just us going to the Capitol and just hammering this through. That's not, I mean, in the end, we could go, oh yeah, man, guess what we did? But that's not how it works.
There was other people that knew people, but didn't want to put their name out there.
They did not want to put their name out there.
They gave all the information we needed or what have you, but wanted no part of it or wanted to stay in the shadows.
And it's like, I didn't understand. I'm like, well, why not? And he goes, well, I think we'll be scrutinized. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, I think, if you mention us, I think we'll be targeted. And I'm like, dude, you see that in the movies. I'm like, not. And they're like, I don't want my name out there. I will give you every bit of information, every source that I can cite to give you to help you pass this, but I don't want to have anything. He goes, you go be the talking head. I will give you this information. You have the experience with the product, which we did.
They knew two idiots when they seen them.
They knew what they were going to do. They knew, hey, these guys will go do it.
Look at these clowns.
But the thing is we had a lot of experience with that product. We did a ton of experience. I would say more than 99% of people in the state.
Sure.
Including the guys that work for the state. And that's not bragging. That's just, hey, man, that's awesome because we were able to actually go in there and pass that information on to these people that otherwise would never have known, ever have known. And anyway, these guys, so I got into detail with them. I'm like, really, you think they'll do that? Long story short, when all this stuff got said and done and it passed, there was a big process, and we'll go into all of it. I had 3 guys that were in, 2 of them were in the legislature, and one of them worked for the state. And I won't say any names. Yeah. And they said, dude, just so you know, you have a target, a big, fat, red target on your back now because of what you did. And that pissed me off because the way that I look at it is if the state's going to burn resources, if anybody's going to burn resources to try and, what's a good word for it? Not even scrutinize, penalize almost us for what we're doing because we passed legislation that gave us more rights as landowners. That should be a right without even having to do this BS anyway. It didn't set right with me. And, here's another thing too, before we get into it. And I kind of mentioned this last night. I work really good with the game fishing parks. I don't want to say I'm really good friends. We have the best game warden in our county that I bet anybody's ever had. I get along with him. He goes about things the way that they should be gone about. A lot of these new guys out there, man, they try to make a name for themselves the completely wrong way. They'll go up there and they'll assume you're doing everything wrong, every which way wrong. And I've had run-ins, just stupid stuff. We've actually taken ground out of walk-in because these hot-headed kids are coming in saying, dude, you can't drive across your own ground.
Yeah.
That's how much dumbass stuff there is. But I what I like to do, and this is how I approach stuff, right? You can't go in to these situations and with arrogance, with any kind of arrogance, all right? Not conceited, no arrogance. Hey, man, you might know more than they do, but you also have to understand that these guys earned their spot, okay? They earned their spot fair and square. They were voted into that position by a majority of people, and you need to treat them that way. Okay, they have a certain amount of respect no matter whether you like the D behind their name or the R behind their name. You have to sit there and understand that. And that's kind of how we went in about this whole thing and just presented our information with it. But what I like to do, guys, is we deal with a lot of hunters on an annual basis. This year we're up to 26 elk now. I just looked. Last year we had 30. The year before that we're over 20. And we help every single one of those state hunters, okay? We don't have to go out there and at our time and our expense, gut the animal for them or skin it for them or take the loader out there and load it for them or load it by hand for them or quarter it for them or debone it for them. But 90% of those guys, we do it. And the reason that we do that is because a lot of those guys don't have a place to hunt. They might have a job in the city. They might have a job that doesn't allow them to get away from their work very often or their family. So I try to sit back and look at the big perspective and understand, hey, man, these guys would really appreciate a spot to hunt. Sure, there's a fine line there where I'm not going to let them go shoot a trophy, something or another. But a lot of these guys are cow hunters, and we cater to them. So that kind of balances the scales with us and the state. They really like the amount of people that we take out, and they respect that. But at the same time, I ask those guys that I make sure that those guys know that come out and hunt that sure, hunting should be a right. I think it should be on public ground for sure. It is. But on private ground, they have to remember it's a privilege. It's not their right to hunt private ground. It's not my right to go over to your ranch and say, hey, dude, I'm going to hunt here. You pay those land taxes. You pay for all that equipment. You flip a coin and roll the dice every single year to see and wager whether or not you're even going to be able to break even next year. That's the farming industry nowadays. A lot of times we don't even, you barely break even. These guys drive in the yard and like, oh, dude, you got a brand new 6195R. Guess what? That's a $170,000 tractor. You're rich. That tractor ain't paid for. It's financed.
Yeah.
Along
with the land.
I was just going to say that along with half of this land, we will be in debt for ranchers aren't rich. They don't make their money to retire off of. If everything goes right in their life, they can possibly give that land and pass it on to the next generation. That's why I diversify my job. What I do, I'm not going to make enough money off the ranch to be able to fund this. So you've got to be able to do something a little bit different. Otherwise, you're just going to be living day to day, which is what 99% of these farmers and ranchers do. It's not what they think. And I make sure and try to explain that to guys. Okay, I'm kind of getting off on a rant here, but I try to make sure and explain that to guys so they understand it. And at the same time, I make damn sure that they understand that, hey man, I know you don't have a place to hunt. I want to help you out. I want you to have a good experience here. I want you to have fun here, and I want you to be successful. And that's why we do it. It balances the scales. It makes everybody happy, and it's a win-win. But anyway, let's get back to the Senate Bill 58. What we did, that's just a little bit of kind of how I take things, how I kind of look at things before I actually get, a lot of times it helps to sit back, bite your tongue for a little bit, take a deep breath before you start saying dumb stuff. And I always do that. I always try to sit back. But a lot of times here, this kind of gets pretty crazy with some of this stuff. So, on some of these podcasts, we might let a little bit fly, and we'll try to make sure and let you guys know when the episode's going to be a little more explicit than, a more traditional style podcast. Try to give you a heads up here. But this one could get that way. What we did was we got the prime sponsor. All right. That's what we did. We have guys already that wanted to give us a wealth of information. All right. They gave us a ton of information that we could present as facts. And we presented some of our own opinions as well. And tried to basically sway the minds of the guys that were going to end up voting yay or nay. And what we do, we've got a little bit of a clip here on Keith's phone that has a little bit of we've got all of it, but we don't want to go into detail and really play too much of it. But we've got a clip of Senate Bill 58. This was in 2016, guys. So this was 3 years ago, but it's actually archived, and we can kind of see, you guys can kind of get an idea of what it is that we do or what was said at this, and we'll break it down even more for you and see if Keith can't find it. We'll let it play for a couple minutes. If we get the right spot, go for it, dude.
Smoothly as possible. But I'd like to start things off. I wanted to have a handout for you guys with USDA 2000.
Hey, hold on one second. Let me explain this to him real quick. When you go in there, so this is what happens. This is what happens first. You go in there and you gotta testify. There's a testimony. First off, they have the proponents to the bill, the guys that are for the bill. Okay, there was a couple of us, and then after all the proponents testify, then they have the opponents that basically counter it. Well, this is why I don't like it. This is why it shouldn't be passed, etc. Then once the opponents are all done, they have a rebuttal. Okay, and in this case, in Senate Bill 58, the prime sponsor of our bill, one of the senators said, hey, James, when everything was said and done, they're like, would you do the rebuttal? And I'm new to this. Like I said, I'm not a people person. I didn't want to be up in front of these guys, but it was, if you know what you're talking about and you don't try to fabricate stuff, it's not that hard to do as long as you can kind of, not get too nervous. But I'll tell you what, man, you can hear it in my voice. I was shaking. I was excited. My heart was racing. My blood pressure was up. I was freaking, it was one of those things where it was exciting and it was fun. I wouldn't really necessarily like to do it again, but he asked me on the rebuttal, he goes, hey, what happens is I go, well, what do I do? What do I do? He goes, you got your notebook, just write down notes, counter everything that these guys say. Anything that these opponents are saying that you can counter with maybe legit facts or a really good opinion, do it, write it down and counter it. And that's what I did at the end. So that's the process, how it goes, just so you guys know. We'll listen to a little bit more here.
Loss. Take note that about 75%, 72% of these losses were due to predation.
This is a lot of statistics here.
Amounts to $1.3 million worth of loss just in the state of South Dakota and that year alone because of predation. Those are based on a $381 calf and a $1,000 cow. A lot of you guys know that since 2010, those prices have almost doubled a certain time. So you could take 1.3 million and almost correlate it to 2 million. Basically, the way that I'm looking at this is you're putting a right back into the landowner's hands to protect the animals that we raise for your food. Now, I'd like to go over some other talking points here. Just like farming, technology changes.
All right, that's just like I said, just a little bit of a clip, and we might play a little bit more as we go on. But you know, that's the way that I really like to present this. Was they're putting a right back into our hands to protect the animals that we raise for the world's food, and that's what I really that's a tough one, really a tough one to argue against. It really is, but what some of the things here, guys, that I've got a couple pieces of paper. I've still got my pamphlet or my notes, I should say, from some of the sessions that we went to, but some of the guys that helped us that didn't care. You know, I asked once those two guys kind of broke the ice and said, "Dude, I don't want my name known." I asked everybody that I got information from if they cared, because I didn't want to, you know, upset anybody. But we had, like, for example, this is a good one right here. I got a hold of the Pheasants Forever Chapter 872 in Mitchell, South Dakota. This is the largest chapter of Pheasants Forever in the nation and Canada, in the United States and Canada. That's a force. I mean, if you look at it, South Dakota is known for what? Their pheasants. You know, that's really what a lot of people come in here, and that's a big revenue source for the state. And it just makes sense to be able to kill coyotes instead of, you know, 12 hours or 10 hours or 8 hours during the day, but to be able to do it at one of the most successful times, and that's at night. It also aids in killing coon. You know, we fortunately for us this year, we just got a new governor, Kristi Noem, and she actually did something that I thought was really cool. I signed up within an hour after they did it. They gave away X amount of free traps, live traps. Yeah. And when I called, I got an email, and I'm like, what is this? Within an hour, I called, and they were gone. Their traps there was thousands of them gone.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that got them way late, you know, just because they were all gone.
And the whole purpose for that was to help eliminate varmints, and predators
for the pheasants.
Yeah, for the pheasants.
And what they put a $500,000 amount on it.
Yep. So the bounty was basically $10 a tail.
Sure.
Once they hit that price point, they cut it off. I don't know if they reached it, but they did shut it off to a certain point.
They reached it. They shut it off. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I think they allowed a certain amount per person, maybe $500 and something dollars.
So I got you.
Yeah.
So they do a lot of things like that. That's pretty cool. But you know, the little things like this. What this guy did was, Dave Allen. He actually came out here elk hunting last year, and
this is part of the Pheasants Forever.
Yep. This is the president of the Pheasants Forever,
okay.
the largest chapter in the nation. He actually printed off this letter and letterhead, and we handed it to each one of the senators. And then when we had to go back to the House, they did it there as well. And that's awesome. Guys that do that's a force multiplier. If you can get guys to do stuff like this, it just makes sense.
Oh, sure.
It really does. And another thing too, like here's a picture. I'll show you guys on YouTube. If you guys can see this here, I did it yesterday too, but here we go. So this picture was actually taken in black hot, and so my hands are hot. This leg right here is hot.
And this is a thermal picture.
Yep, thermal imaging with a Otis X, I believe at the time. And this is Keith, but I took the picture, or it's actually a video still shot. This leg right here is white, okay? And guys, what we're looking at is a coyote. You can see half the coyote. Keith's holding up both of the front legs, and this is kind of a demonstration that we did for the people that weren't real familiar with thermal, that were making the decision, the senators and the representatives. And I said, here's the deal. You know, this coyote, we know for a fact we shot this coyote with with the rimfire round.
And when you're saying the one leg is black, meaning it's on black hot, so the black is heat, and the other one is white because it's cold. So that leg is dead.
It's gonna fall off if not the animals. And this was a sub-zero night, dude. I think this was like a 15 below night. We were freezing, and this coyote, I think we flanked this one, as a matter of fact, because they were coming into the calving lot to eat. Remember, they were coming into the calving lot to eat afterbirth.
Yep.
And we saw this coyote limping, and we knew, man. I mean, we actually, you know what? We skinned him. And that's what happened. We skinned that coyote, and we knew that was any other round, 223. Well, we got to go into all that too. Anything a little bit more juiced up than a rimfire would have that coyote would have been done.
Yeah.
And that's what we showed them. You know, it puts that animal into a not a good situation. You know, not only from the ethical side of things, like I said, I don't like to use. But, you know, if you shoot an animal like that, it could amplify the effects of what they're doing. They could get, you know, who knows what they could go off and do. I mean, the chances of that, most of the time they run off and die a miserable death, or they lose a leg.
Or they're wounded bad enough to come in and eat your cat.
Or that. No,
you know,
that's what I was getting at.
Move into closer areas, easier prey.
Exactly, easier prey. They have to do something. They'll survive. They do it. That's a good point. But here's the deal, guys. We should go into this too. Tell them what our law is as it sits, as it did before we got this passed.
As far as the spotlighting deal,
yeah.
So before 2016, it was the landowner and one guest, correct, could kill predators with spotlights, on private ground, obviously, but
the landowner had to be present
with the landowner, correct, and it had to be a shotgun or a rimfire rifle, and this is where, you know, we stepped in as far as wanting to change the rimfire, but so in other words, what it's saying is I could go out any time of the night with moonlight and not use a spotlight at all.
With
moonlight, which is we've done
a lot, especially, you know, with snow cover, because you get that reflection and it's bright.
You get them bright nights with snow. You know, you get a foot of snow on the ground. Of who doesn't want to call a coyote? You know, that's cool.
It's you can do it. You can hammer them.
Oh, sure. But as it sat with the moonlight, you could shoot any caliber rifle you wanted to, as long as you weren't using artificial light. So whether that be a 416, a 338, a 22-250, any of it, it was perfectly fine. So, I mean, in all honesty, just thinking that's retarded, you know?
Doesn't make sense
at all. You know, we can see a mile with a thermal, but yet,
or forever, as far as you can see during the day.
But yet they only want to let us use a rimfire rifle. So that's where we came in, and that's kind of where it all started, really.
Yeah, that's where I did like another kind of a presentation, if you will. I got it's hard to get into the Capitol with ammunition or any kind of a firearm, but we got checked, we got cleared to bring a 223 and a Barrett 416 case.
Yep.
And that's how I presented it. It was a visual. It was a very good, accurate representation of what you could do. Now, there's not a lot of guys out there that are going to go take a 50 cal, an M107A. We could take an M107A1, a semi-auto 50 cal Barrett with the day optics and freaking smoke at coyotes under a full moon, 100% legally, but they wouldn't let us use thermal imaging or night vision with a 223 or 22-250. Yeah. So our main goal, guys, in this whole situation was to allow a 224 caliber or under, as long as it was a center fire. Okay, that is basically every varmint and predator round that a guy would ever need for ethical, high velocity, hydrostatic shock. Your 223, your 22-250, your 250 Ackley, your 22 Creedmoor, your 220 Swift.
We just wanted to use our day rifle for night hunting.
And what we wanted is I'll say it again, hydrostatic shock. A lock them up, smiley.
We wanted a dead coyote is what we wanted.
Done.
You know?
Tip over, lock up, lockjaw, freaking done. That's what we wanted. And so that's what I did was I took that Barrett 416 case. I set it right up on the oh gosh, it's up. There was like there was a table like this.
Yeah.
With the microphone like this, and they're all sitting around you.
You're facing them.
Yep, I'm facing them. The whole audience and everybody's sitting behind us.
Yep.
And I took that 416 and set it right here. I took the 223, set it right here, and I said, here's the deal, guys. We could legally take this Barrett 416. It shoots a 395 grain spun solid projectile, 3,250 feet per second. We can take that at night with a daytime optic under a full moon, or even not under a full moon, under starlit with snow.
As long as you weren't using a spotlight.
Or thermal.
Or thermal.
Or night vision. As long as you weren't using what you could actually see with, you couldn't do it.
As long as you couldn't see, you could use it.
Yeah.
That's about what it amounted
That's what
to.
it was.
Yeah.
But you can't go in there and say that because they're like,
not.
but there was one guy that didn't.
They didn't understand.
He voted for it. Yeah. He was the tipping point, and he's like, "I'm not voting for it." And he's like, "I don't get it.
Yeah.
What? How does that make sense?" And I'm like, "It don't." and so then I just said, and then all we want to do, guys, is to use a caliber like this with thermal and night vision. It's a caliber that's 3/1000ths of a diameter bigger than a 22 rimfire, going a little bit faster, And it opened their eyes. They're like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And we had a significant amount of opposition. We had guys here. We got to talk about this too. So when we got it passed, before we even started, we had people saying, you guys are going up against a machine. You guys are going up against an organization that has unlimited funding. You don't know what you're getting into. You're getting in way over your head. You'll never get. I've had way more guys tell us that we'd never get it done than we would.
Oh yeah, by far.
And it was because the Game Fish and Parks opposed us. That we were dealing with the machine of an organization that had unlimited funding. They had a lobbyist that gets paid to lobby. Every single.
Yeah, that was his job, to sit there and lobby against whatever
they didn't want.
Whether he knew anything about it or not, he was paid to lobby against it.
And
that's what they told him.
When he came in and he went up there, he had a book that was that thick, dude. And I'm like, oh, we're done. Until he started talking, and he's a good dude. He came up to me when we got done, and he goes, James, my hat's off to you, man. I cannot counter what you're saying. And that goes to show you they don't have experience with it. Why counter it then?
Yeah.
Why? Anyway, so we had a lot of guys tell us that you can't, and this is where I get really, really fired up. We had a lot of guys tell us, you know what, dude, this ain't going to happen unless when we got done with passing it in the Senate,
yep.
We were going down the stairs and we were heading out. We were like, dude, we got to go home and feed. We got to go home and kill coyotes.
Yeah.
And we were jacked up, you know what? We had people say, you know what, man, if you guys got it past the Senate, the House is like a freaking walk in the park. It's a Wild West.
Well, didn't that lady stop us on our way out? And she said, hey, I got a bill that's coming up next week.
Yeah.
You guys want to come back up here and talk on that?
I'm like, hey, we're going to turn ourselves into paid lobbyists here. What's the price on that? We'll come back if you make it fair. Yeah. And I bet we could have.
Right.
But we're like, we got to kill coyotes instead. So we go out, and actually it was the chairman of the Senate at the time. And you can look him up in 2016 if you wanted his name, but he was a rancher, and he voted against us.
Yeah.
And I'm like scratching my head going, dude, you own thousands of acres and hundreds of, they have a big ranch outlet up there where they're at. His family owns that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. They do like corrals and all tanks and bale feeders, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Up by Union Center.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, I like what you're doing. But this is where I learned a lot about politics. And we'll tell you, man, we got stabbed in the back, man, hard. And he goes, I like what you're doing, but I'm going to tell you the truth. He goes, I couldn't vote for you guys because of the people that are basically, and it's right. He's right. Those guys that voted for him, the majority of people that voted for him, that's what his job is to do. Yes. And that's why even though he might have wanted to, the people...
As much as he wanted to or agreed with it or thought it was a good idea, it didn't matter.
He couldn't do it.
Yep.
And that's where I kind of learned a lot. I'm like, all right, you can't just go, oh, dude, these guys are stupid. Man, they should be voting. You have to cater to the people that voted for you. Otherwise, guess what? You don't get voted in next time.
Right.
And he goes, I'm going to help you out. if you guys you have to have three people. You have to have three people backing you.
Yeah.
The South Dakota stock growers, the South Dakota cattlemen, and the South Dakota sheep growers. He goes, if you get those three people, you'll do it. If you don't, you won't. And I'm like, okay. Well, we already knew the South Dakota stock growers opposed this. Their lobbyists opposed this, and it was basically because of spotlighting, okay? Evidently, a bunch of the stock grower members didn't want us to be able to spotlight with a higher caliber,
right?
Which pisses me off because I wanted it left in there, and we'll get into that because 99% of these ranchers that are going out to check cows at night might not be technologically as advanced as we are, but they're spotlighting. And if they see a coyote out there in their calving lot, what are they going to do if they've got an AR in their pickup or a 22-250?
They ain't going to shoot it with a 22. I can guarantee you that.
Exactly. And guess what happens if they get caught? Class 2 misdemeanor. That's 100% pure and utter BS is what that is. They're going to penalize a landowner for killing a predator in his calving lot because of his. I guarantee you, I know a lot of guys that'll shoot him with a hell of a lot bigger round than a 224. When they got it in their pickup.
Yep, they sure as hell will.
And ain't nobody going to do nothing about it. But with what we do, filming, etc., you got to do it the right way. We're scrutinized to the fullest. Yep. That's why we're doing this, okay? But anyway, he said that. So when I got home, first thing I do is I called the South Dakota, the sheep growers. This guy's name was Max Matthews, I think.
And weren't they on board right away?
Dude, he goes, Done. What do you need? I'll be there. I'm going to testify as a proponent. I'm there. Done. Don't even go. I'll look and I'll find out when it is and I'll go. I'm like, sweet. This might be easier than I thought.
Yeah.
Well, then I called the cattleman, talked to some lady I don't even know, and she's like, "Yeah, we're just gonna kind of stay neutral on this because we don't want to upset any members." Well, a non-vote is basically a vote against it because they don't have our back. And then I called the president of the South Dakota stock growers and talked to them. I'm like, hey, you know what do we have to do to kind of get you on board? And they're like, well, we're not going to listen to you in the first place because you're not a member. I'm like, well, my grandpa was. And they're like, that don't matter. You're not your grandpa. So I went and bought a membership to the South Dakota stock growers. It was like $100 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, just so I could voice my opinion and it would count.
So you thought they would listen to you?
Yes. So that
where'd that get you?
A big old knife right in the shoulder blades, man. That's exactly what it got. I paid $100 to get stabbed in the groin. And so I tried to do all that we could, and we get to the house, right? This is the last step before it actually goes through the major voting. So the whole Senate votes on it, and then the whole House votes on it. We go through the Ag Committee because it's an agricultural amendment, basically. And then it goes to the governor's desk to get signed. Yeah. So there was still a long ways to go, an uphill battle. Well, we get to the House, and right before we go in, the prime sponsor comes out, and you and I are sitting out there talking, and he goes, hey, dude, here's the deal. And this is where I kind of learned, got a real dose of reality about politics. He goes, hey, we're going to take a couple things out of this bill. And I'm like, well, what are we going to take out? And he goes, well, we're going to take out 4 guests and only put 2 in.
Because it read before with the landowner and 4 guests.
That's what they added in. I'm like, right. I didn't even know that they added that. I'm like, I don't
right.
care. I'm like, I didn't want 4 guests.
That wasn't why we wanted to change. We didn't want to change. That didn't matter to us.
Yeah, and there's only 3 of us anyway. So if a landowner and 2 guests could go, or usually most of the time there's not 4 of us going.
No.
Unless somebody's filming.
Right.
But I'm like, that's all right, whatever. I'm like, why are we doing this? He's like, he didn't really say a whole lot. Well, then he goes, and then the other thing that we're going to do is take out spotlighting. That's where I got kind of pissed because of what I just said previously. You get some rancher that sees a coyote in his calving lot, and it's still a class 2 misdemeanor to do that.
And the spotlighting deal, he said he was going to take it out because then the stock growers was going to be on our side.
Exactly. That's hey, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine.
Yep.
You take that out, it'll make our members happy.
Yep.
And we'll get. And I'm like, all right, whatever.
Good enough.
If it makes it easier, do it.
Yep.
Go for it. Well, we get up there and do the testimony as proponents, and then the opponents come up. One guy goes, the next guy goes, and I'm like, oh man, sweet, we're done after this. do the rebuttal, and we'll be done. So I've got wasn't near as nervous the second time because I knew how the process went. And then here he comes, the lobbyist for the South Dakota stock growers is the last person. I thought he comes up, and I thought it was all done. And here he comes as an opponent.
And this deal is like a week and a half later, right?
Yeah,
Was this lobbyist lobbying against us for somebody else the first time around, or was it always the stock growers? Do you remember?
I know for a fact it was for the stock growers, but it might have been. I don't remember.
You know what I mean?
I know for a fact he was basically the stock growers.
Because he was against it all the way.
Yeah.
And he was there every time we went there.
Yeah. I don't know if it was for something else, but it might have been too. But it was for sure for the stock growers for both times.
Okay, because I didn't know if he was on the Game Fish and Parks.
Nope.
Okay.
Game
but
Fish
I knew
and
there
Parks,
was another guy for the Game Fish and Parks.
Yeah, he was their head dude.
But I didn't know if there was the other guy as well.
Yeah, there was a guy named Tony Leaf was the lobby. He was like pretty, like I want to say he's third up on the Game Fish and Parks totem pole regarding stature.
Right.
So he's up there. And I had never had any issues with him. He's one of the guys that said, hey, dude, I can't counter what you're saying.
And which afterwards, we sat there and talked to him for a while.
Yeah.
It's just...
That's how it goes.
He had to do his job.
Yep. It's like a football game or baseball game. When you get done, you shake hands and you go each other separate ways.
Right.
Winner's a winner. But this guy, anyway, we're so back to it. We're thinking, all right, man, we got this. There's no more opponents. We're done. The South Dakota stock growers are just zipping it.
Because we took the spotlighting out.
Yep.
So now they're good.
But guess what happens? Here he comes. And I'm sitting there going, what? He goes up there. He goes, well, we really do like the fact that the spotlighting isn't in this. It's amended out of this legislation, out of this current law now, but we unfortunately still can't support it. And I freaking almost lost it. I sat back and I was so hot pissed that what do you do? Anyway, before we even went into the House Ag Committee and did any of that through the House, I even asked Jason, I'm like, why do this, dude? We got this. This will pass no matter what. This will pass. And he's like, we just got, that's one of those things where we were saying,
scratch your back, dude.
Yep. We'll sacrifice this out of my bill. And later on, when I want something out of your bill, you'll give it to me.
That's just it. Maybe tomorrow there's another bill coming up. Well, if I do this, maybe I'll get what I want on that one.
Yep. To appease others. That's what it is. And that's there's no getting around it. That's how it works.
That is 100% how it works.
And we, so it's like, whatever. I said spotlighting to us is kind of obsolete because it is, but I'm not looking out just for us. I'm looking out for the 80-year-old dude, 70-year-old dude that needs to kill a damn pair of nasty ass coyotes in their lot and he can't even do it.
Yep.
And that's ridiculous. And most of those guys don't carry around a damn freaking rimfire gun in their pickup. Give me a break. And anyway, it passed. I don't even know what the number was. It passed with flying colors on that deal. And then from there on out, we paid really close attention to it. And the House, when the whole House committee, the whole entire House or Senate voted, it passed. Not a lot narrower than when the House voted on it. Then it passed, and then our fingers were crossed. We're like, dude, you know what? Governor's got to sign it in. He can't veto it.
Yep.
And he signed it in, and there it was. We were done. And is there anything else that you think that I'm missing on this for the Senate Bill 58 before we jump in? We're at 45 minutes. But before we jump into, if there's anything that you think I'm missing.
So, and nothing ever changed on the spotlighting as far as the law from when we started.
Spotlighting stays the same. Rimfire and shotgun.
Yep. The only thing that changed was the caliber for the thermal and night vision.
Yep.
Which we were 100% okay with.
Yep.
But, I mean, as far as, like you said,
yeah, there's
the rancher that is out checking his cows, that is all still the same.
Oh, yep.
The only thing different is the caliber specific for the thermal and night vision.
And how they word it is any 225 caliber and down,
right.
Which is, it covers the bases.
Right.
And then, guys, all right, so I'm trying to think. If you rack your brain while I'm talking about this, you let me know if there's something that I missed. But so a year goes by, and a guy calls me real early in the morning, and I'll name his name. His name was Mark Foster. He's a good dude. He's been out here a couple of times, bought a suppressor from me, and awesome guy. I never knew who he was. I'm actually in bed. It's like 4:30 in the morning, and he's on pier time, Central Time, so it's 5:30 there, and he calls me. He's like, hey, dude, Joe, do I wake you up? I'm like, no, don't worry about it, dude. I was about ready to get up. I was already lifting weights. And he goes, hey, man, you know, I got your name from numerous guys that if I want to get something, try to get something going. And let me reinforce this, guys.
This will show you how passionate you are about coyote hunting itself.
Yeah,
Because
not just us.
Changing this part of the deal had nothing to do with us as far as what we do.
It was actually worse for us.
Worse for us. But I mean, as far as you, I mean, that's just saying how much you cared about it to even give you your time.
And this all goes back to reflect on what I said about the South Dakota Sportsman, guys that aren't landowners. Okay, that's how considerate we are of guys. There's so many guys out there that don't get along with the state. They don't get along with other landowners and their landowners themselves. They don't get along with hunters. Hey, like I said, I'm not going to let anybody come out here and shoot a 160-inch whitetail or 350-inch bull without, you know, being scrutinized.
Sure.
Or giving us what I think it's worth. But I also, like I said, you guys listen to it. What we do for the South Dakota Sportsman, we help them a lot. And anyway, this guy called me, and he goes, I've heard from a couple guys that you'd probably be the guy to talk to. And let me reinforce this, guys. We aren't the ones that did this. We were basically the tip of the spear, but there was everybody behind us that were feeding us this information. They were giving us this intel. They were supporting us. They were helping us with talking points. And hey, man, you should focus on these. The percentages of depredation, of sheep losses, of, you know, these states allow it, blah, 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 everything. They were giving us intel that we wouldn't have came up with ourselves.
Right.
We just had experience with the product, and we could basically, you know, hand it over, give it to these guys, express it, and paint them a picture of how all of this works. And I think we did a pretty good job. But anyway, this guy, so he gets a hold of us. He goes, hey, man, you know, it's a good deal for landowners. He goes, it's cool. He goes, but you know what I'm running into? There's a lot of these guys that are 70, 80 years old, 60 years old, 50, 40, that just don't want to go out at night.
Or just have they're not hunters maybe.
They don't, yeah. They're like, hey, man, you know what? Guess what? I'm checking cows every hour, every 2 hours, all day, all night. I don't want to stay up till 3 o'clock and freeze my balls off.
Right.
Why would I want to do that? And I'm like, okay. So what do you do? He's like, well, I would like to get it a little bit easier for guys like us that aren't landowners to be able to do what you guys do and help other ranchers out by easier means. So the landowner had to be with you is what the rule was for Senate Bill 58. If we walked out of our driveway, jumped across the fence, and we were on our neighbor's ground, illegal. He had to be holding our hand, and he give us permission all the time, dude.
Yeah. After one night of taking him out all night and freezing his ass off, that's all it took. He was done.
He said, I'm done.
He goes, all right, that's cool. I've had enough.
That's exactly that. This is cool stuff, dude, but I don't want to do this anymore.
You guys are crazy. You just go without me. But you couldn't.
We couldn't. No, he's got, I mean, he begging us, come over. Coyotes are killing my cats. They're in my yard. We couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where I kind of sat back and I'm like, you know what, man, this might open a can of worms. But once again, you know, he's like, I go, well, what do you want to do, Mark? What are you thinking? I'm like, if I could write the law, I would say, hey, you know what, man? I trust you. I know who you are. You know my ground. You know what pasture my cows are in. Shake my hand. You're good. You can go. You can go wherever. If I was haying or if I was combining late and there was coyotes coming out, Keith, go take my gun and go kill those coyotes. No questions asked. I gave you permission. Go. That's how it should be. But it's not. So he's like, well, he goes, it's not going to be that easy. I'm like, well, what are you thinking? Written permission? Yeah, written permission. If the landowner would give written permission, written consent to a hunter, they can legally hunt their ground. And so I'm like, sure. Like I kind of sat back a little bit and thought about it. I'm like, you know what? If you think about it, that really bridges the gap between a lot of sportsmen and a lot of landowners. And I think that needs to happen. We're seeing a big dividing line between meat eaters, meat hunters, public landowners, and freaking bone hunters. 160 inch, 400 inch elk, private landowners. That's stupid. There's a saying that says, if we don't all hang together, in the end, we'll all hang apart. And that's the truth. That's what's coming, guys. The more that you nitpick each other and get stupid, the further each one of us is going to freaking hang from a tree, because that's the way I look at it. Okay. There's a place and time for everything. There's a time to get pissed at guys, but there's a time to not get along with the state. There's a time to probably not get along with your neighbor. But if you can do it the right way, it'll benefit everybody. And that's the way I kind of sat back and looked at this. I'm like, you know what? Like I said, this could open up a can of worms.
Yeah, because like I said, we didn't need that.
Why?
We got enough private ground.
Yeah, we could.
We didn't need any part of that.
We could actually go to so many more places and probably kill way more coyotes. And be selfish about it.
Sure.
But it doesn't make sense for the guys that want to do it. And that's how I looked at it. You know what? There's a lot of good guys out there that want to experience this. Why not?
Sure.
It's a sport, man. Instead of sitting in and playing Call of Duty 4 with your kid, show them the real thing. Let them look through the freaking Mark 360 or through the Pulsar. Let them experience that.
Is Call of Duty 4 actually a real thing?
I
don't know.
I don't know. Maybe it is. Anyway,
you just making shit up.
I
again?
am. Yeah, freaking Army of Two bullshit. And I used to play that. That was pretty cool though. Anyway, I went back to Pierre, and that was House Bill 1219, and that was like a walk in the park. That was a walk in the park. And then
and what did that change?
That allowed any guy that has a license that's legal to be able to hunt a landowner's ground with written permission, written consent. So I've got a book.
That's with thermal and night vision.
Yep. And I've got a book, and we've got 20 names on it, signed, dated.
Yeah. Well, we each carry a deal, a sheet, which I have mine in my bino pack.
Yep. It's got permission. So if we split up,
I got this. I got all these coyotes. I said, okay, well, you want us to come over here? I need your written permission.
Get it
for
signed
us to legally come over there,
and then we're golden,
and we're good.
We're 100% set. Yep. And I don't think that's a bad deal.
And maybe some of them guys are like, well, I want to sit with you one night. I want to sit with you one time. Let's go.
All right.
Yep. Perfect.
We'll wait for the coldest night.
Yeah.
But a lot of those guys want to experience it, but that's about it. One time they're like, oh man, I just want to see what this is about.
That's all it takes is one time, and
they're done. You look over and they're freaking nodding off at about 1 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock comes and they're walking back to the house. We've done some really good stuff for guys. A lot of it's recorded over at, in Blues Feedlot. Those guys have some coyotes coming footage. In. Awesome stuff. And a lot of guys really appreciate it. And that was Senate bill, or that was House Bill 1219. So
and that was a year later, I believe, correct?
A year later, we got that passed, and that just hammered through. There was really no opposition to that. Did I talk about the rebuttal? Like some of the, I don't think so. So in Senate Bill 58 and House Bill 1219, there was a rebuttal. There's arguing points there that I did mention, but if you know what you're talking about, you can counter it. Like we were listening to it today. Some of the rebuttal, the comments that the guys were talking about was,
oh, you boys.
Boys will be boys, like, hey man,
And this was coming from the Game Fish and Parks guy, correct?
Yep. One of them was boys will be boys. Boys are gonna be dumb. They're going through changes. I'm like, everybody's done something stupid in their life. All right. But the way that I just countered it with facts. I'm like, you know what, man? As parents, I'm a parent. You're a parent. It's our responsibility to try and raise our kids right. That's what we try to do. That's what everybody in their right mind tries to do.
Correct.
And I said, hey, I've got a video of my kid. He's 5 years old. He shot my 338 Norm out to 1,150 yards. First shot, steal. And I'm like, I would not have let him do that if I didn't think it was right. I'm trying to teach him what if the best thing that you can do is take a kid with you and show them what a firearm can do? Hey, man, when you pull that trigger, you can never take that bullet back. Whether it hits dirt or whether it hits flesh, you can't bring that back. You take them with hunting, you show them what it does to a deer, you show them what it does to a prairie dog. That's the best damn thing that you can do other than firearm safety.
Right.
Show them what it does. And I just kind of explained it that way. You know, you could say, you could throw scare tactics out there all you want, you know, anything, but you just counter it in a respectful way. And they agreed with me on it. Another one of the things was, well, you're introducing a caliber that's such a high velocity, and he was going over like the trajectory aspect at like 400 yards or 500 yards, the drop difference from a rim fire to, I think a 220 Swift, I think.
Is that what he came up with?
And it was, I mean, there's a significant difference there, but he left out a lot of facts. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. You introduce velocity, sure, you're going to get more distance, but you also get more fragmentation. You know, we're using rounds that are designed. We have cartridge selections geared around preserving the fur. We don't want them to blow fur up, but at the same time, the best way to explain it is if you shoot a 22 on ground that may be kind of frozen, an inch of frost, angled down, a 22 has a lot more chances to ricochet just because of its inherent nature than a 223 does, you know, than a 22 250 does.
Right.
And, you know, that's something else too. You know, he's like, well, you want to introduce rifles and cartridges that will shoot further than what your human eye can see. And I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. A 22 will shoot further than you can see in a lot of instances if you aim it at 45 degrees and pull the trigger. That's not we're not out here to do that. Why even throw that out there? But anything, you know, that's the opinion thing. And
right.
I mean, sure, there was some facts there, but you also have to factor in what our goal is here. I'm like, our goal here isn't to aim it at 45 degrees and shoot and see if it'll go out of sight. It's to make a precision, ethical shot.
Yeah, we ain't trying to get the dumbest thing in the world passed to make things more dangerous for somebody.
Exactly. We're actually trying to make it safer.
Right.
We're instead of driving at night without headlights, we want to introduce headlights.
Yeah.
That's what night vision and thermal is for these calibers. That's exactly what it is. But that's you know, there was another rebuttal I'll go over real quick for House Bill 1219. I remember it distinctly. One of them was
the second time around.
Yep, the second time where we got the written permission. And what it was, one of the things was, it was kind of dumb. It was online. He was referring to online reviews. Online reviews.
That was the second one or the first one?
That was the second one.
Okay, because I remember this.
No, maybe it was the first one then.
It was, dude.
Okay.
It was.
Remember, he was referring to online. He's like, well, some of these guys, you know, by judging this scope, you can't, you know, it is night vision scope. And these guys are saying you can't see beyond 100 yards. It's not worth buying. So he was going by online ratings.
Right.
And I'm like, that was an easy one to counter, because I go up there and I'm like, you know what, man, in this day and age, people actually get paid to give negative feedback. They get paid to give positive feedback.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just that when it's your last leg, when it's your last resort, you have to try to throw something at the wall to see if it'll stick. And that's what they were doing. But, you know, it was a fun process for us. And that's kind of, I mean, I think that's the rundown. I think that's a lot of this, pretty much everything that we've covered.
Yeah, I think you went over about everything that I can think of anyways. I don't know.
We're at an hour, dude. We're at 59 minutes and 44 seconds. What do we got right there on that bad boy?
Did you hit record today?
I did. You can tell them about that one.
We were 50 minutes deep into one of these yesterday, and James just realized he didn't hit record.
Hey, that light's still green, dude. What?
So, regardless, we did it over, I guess you'd say.
And I'm going to get into a little bit more detail with these. I'm going to edit whenever somebody's talking. I'm going to swap the angle. That's why we're doing this.
Just on the camera, yeah.
Just so you guys can visually see it a little bit better. I think probably tomorrow, if Keith comes out, I'm going to probably let him and John hammer out a podcast, and they can do whatever they want and do, you know, let them kind of write up an outline and some talking points. And I appreciate we've had an overwhelming response of feedback, guys. We have a lot of talking points to go over. We'll be able to do so much work. This will be a blast this year to be able to break things down individually and go into thorough detail on stuff. You got anything?
I got nothing.
All right.
I'm 2 bangs deep. And
we always go for before we get out of here, we usually, when we're out doing something, we go for a bang cruise, and that's, we take one of the Raptors out, whether it's the Gen 2 or the Gen 1, and cruise around the block that we call and get on some hills, glass. It's elk season, deer season, just kind of see what's going on,
always looking for coyotes,
making sure nobody's
looking for prospects.
We're counting inventory is what we're doing.
Counting inventory.
We got number 1. We got T-Bone over here that lives in this draw. What's the one? What do we got with the one that lived? What was the one that ran across the road in front of us? You recognize that one?
Oh, Aya.
Aya, there you go. That one. Yeah, she lives in segment 16. Remember? Section 16. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Then we got Cotton Ball. He's been around for a couple years with the white tip on his tail. He's down here in pivot number 1, I think. We'll pray.
You're so full of shit.
Oh, all right, guys. Anyway, I hope that you guys are enjoying what we do. Be sure to subscribe to our online content. Check out our Instagram page. You are
Keith Rissy. On Instagram, it's O'NeillOps_pro staff.
And I'm O'Neill Ops. And check out the YouTube channel. You guys make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's what our goal is, 100,000 subscribers. We're climbing up to 50,000. I know we got to get more content out there, and we're going to be doing it this year. Check out the Facebook page. We throw a lot of pictures up there, a lot of cool Instagram posts there as well. And hope you guys are enjoying what we do. Once again, I'm James O'Neill, and this has been the O'Neill Ops Podcast, and we are out.